The diamond ring on her finger caught the light as she signed the divorce papers. Miranda Chin, my former best friend, didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just smiled at me across the lawyer's mahogany desk, her hand resting possessively on my husband's arm. Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and like my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you gave them the keys to your entire life, only to watch them steal everything? That's what happened to me. But this isn't a story about betrayal. It's about what comes after, when you have nothing left but yourself. My name is Sophia Clark, and 3 years ago, I lost everything in a single afternoon. My marriage, my business, my home, even my dog. But that loss led me to discover something I never knew I had: the strength to rebuild from absolute zero. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the day my perfect life shattered like glass. 3 years earlier, Seattle, Washington. The Pike Place Market was bustling with the usual Saturday crowd. Tourists snapping photos of flying fish, locals hunting for fresh produce, street musicians filling the air with jazz. I was there meeting Marcus, my husband of 6 years, for lunch at our favorite seafood place overlooking the Sound. I arrived early as always. Marcus was chronically late, but I'd learned to bring a book and enjoy the wait. I ordered us a bottle of wine and settled in to read. That's when I saw them, Marcus and Miranda, walking hand in hand through the market below. They stopped at a flower stand, and he bought her a bouquet of peonies. My favorite flowers. The ones he always said were too expensive for, just because. I watched him tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so intimate, so familiar, that my stomach turned. This wasn't a new affair. This was comfortable. Practiced. Old. How long? That was my first thought. Not why or how could they, but how long had I been the fool? I left the restaurant without waiting. I walked for hours through the city, my mind replaying every memory, searching for clues I'd missed. Miranda had been my best friend since college. She was Lily's godmother. We'd built our catering business together from scratch, working side by side for 4 years. She'd held my hand through my mother's funeral. I'd held hers through her divorce. Her divorce. The thought hit me like ice water. Her ex-husband, David, had caught her cheating. She'd cried on my couch for weeks, swearing she'd made a mistake, that she'd lost herself. I'd believed her. I'd defended her. I'd given her a job when no one else would hire her. And all along, she'd been sleeping with my husband. When I finally went home that evening, Marcus was already there, watching television in his usual spot on the couch. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe. Where were you?" I waited at the restaurant for an hour. The lie came so easily to him. I almost admired the audacity. "I saw you," I said simply. His face didn't change. "Saw me where?" "At the market. With Miranda." The smile faded. For a moment, I thought he might try to deny it. Instead, he sighed and rubbed his face. "How long have you known?" "Since about noon." "How long has it been going on?" He was quiet for a long time. 2 years. 2 years. 24 months. 730 days of lies. I felt something inside me go very still and very cold. "I want a divorce," I said. "Sophia, wait. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I want you out of this house by tomorrow. This is my house too. I'm not going anywhere." He was right. The house was in both our names. So was the business. So was everything we'd built together. I'd been so trusting, so sure we were partners, that I'd never protected myself. "Fine," I said. "Then I'll go." I walked to our bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, and started packing. Marcus followed me, talking the whole time. Excuses. Justifications. It didn't mean anything. Miranda pursued him. He was going to end it. He loved me. He wanted to work on our marriage. I didn't respond. I just kept folding clothes and placing them carefully in the suitcase. When it was full, I zipped it up, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked out. "Where are you going?" he called after me. "I don't know. Somewhere you aren't." I ended up at a budget motel near the airport. The kind of place with stained carpet and a flickering neon sign that buzzed all night. I sat on the bed and finally let myself feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The sheer exhaustion of having to start over at 32. I couldn't cry. The tears just wouldn't come. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only a shell. My phone rang. "Miranda." I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment, then answered. Sophia, please let me explain. Did you love him? Silence. Did you love him, or was it just convenient? Free meals, expensive gifts, someone to make you feel wanted while I paid your salary. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Miranda? Explain it to me. Make me understand how my best friend, the woman I trusted with everything, could do this. I didn't plan it. It just happened. We connected. You and Marcus, you were always so focused on the business. He felt neglected. He needed someone to see him. I hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Marcus's number too. Then I turned off my phone and lay in the dark, listening to the highway traffic and the buzzing neon sign. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for a man who didn't want to be kept. I wasn't going to spend months in a messy divorce battle trying to save scraps of a life that was already gone. I was going to let them have it all. Everything. The business, the house, the carefully curated life we'd built. I would walk away with nothing and start completely fresh. It was the scariest decision I'd ever made. And the best one. The divorce lawyer looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mrs. Clark, I need you to understand what you're saying. You built that catering business from the ground up. You have equity in the house. You're entitled to half of everything, possibly more given the circumstances. And you want to walk away with nothing? Yes. May I ask why? I looked out his office window at the Seattle skyline. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring the buildings into gray shapes. Because fighting for pieces of a broken life will take years. Legal fees, court dates, arguments over every dish and every piece of furniture. I'll spend the next 2 years bleeding money to lawyers while tied to the two people I never want to see again. But you'll have something at the end. Will I? Or will I just have objects that remind me of the worst time of my life? I turned back to him. I want a clean break. They can have it all. I just want out. He sighed and started writing. You're making a mistake, but it's your mistake to make. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. Marcus got the house, the business, the car, even our dog Bailey. I got my clothes, my laptop, and my freedom. Miranda sent me a text from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. It said, "Thank you for being mature about this." I deleted it and promised myself that would be the last time I let either of them into my head. 2 months after the divorce. I was living in a studio apartment in Renton, a working-class suburb south of Seattle. The apartment was 400 square feet, with a kitchenette the size of a closet and a bathroom where the shower head dripped constantly. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's television shows word for word. But it was mine. My name on the lease. My space. I'd found work as a waitress at a downtown restaurant called the Copper Pot. It was a nice place, the kind where businessmen had expense account lunches and tourists came for the local seafood. The pay was decent with tips, and the owners were kind enough not to ask too many questions about the gap in my resume. My manager, Rita, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been in the restaurant business for 30 years. She took one look at me on my first day and said, "You've got that look." "What look?" "The look of someone running from something." "Don't worry, honey. Half the staff has it. You'll fit right in." She was right. My co-workers were a collection of people starting over. Diego was putting himself through nursing school. Vanessa was a single mom working 2 jobs. James was a veteran trying to adjust to civilian life. We were all rebuilding, all carrying something heavy, all just trying to get through each day. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I fell into a routine. Wake at 5. Run along the lake to clear my head. Shower, dress, take the bus downtown. Work the lunch shift from 10 to 3, then stay for dinner service 3 nights a week. Come home exhausted. Sleep. Repeat. I saved every penny I could. I didn't buy coffee out. I meal prepped beans and rice on Sundays. I shopped at thrift stores. My coworkers thought I was saving for something big, but the truth was simpler. I just needed to know I could survive. That I could stand on my own 2 feet without Marcus, without Miranda, without anyone. 3 months in, Rita pulled me aside after a busy Saturday lunch. "Sophia, can we talk?" My heart sank. Was I being fired? Had I messed up an order? "You're wasted as a server," she said bluntly. "I'm sorry. You're good at it, don't get me wrong. But I've watched you. The way you talk to the kitchen staff, how you organize your section, the suggestions you've made about the menu. You've done this before, haven't you? Professionally." I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone about my old life. I used to own a catering company. Used to. Lost it in a divorce. Rita nodded like that explained everything. The owners are looking to hire a kitchen manager. Someone to handle inventory, scheduling, vendor relations. It pays more regular hours. I think you should apply. Rita, I appreciate it, but I don't have any formal qualifications. I just learned by doing. That's the best kind of education. Think about it. I did think about it. All night. The old Sophia would have jumped at the opportunity. But the old Sophia had also trusted too easily, reached too high, and fallen too hard. But lying in my tiny apartment, listening to my neighbor's TV through the wall, I realized something. I was surviving, yes. But I wasn't living. I was hiding. Playing it safe because I was terrified of being hurt again. The next morning, I told Rita I wanted the interview. The interview. The owners of the Copper Pot were a married couple, Frank and Diane Torres. They'd opened the restaurant 15 years ago and built it into one of Seattle's most reliable mid-range establishments. Nothing flashy but consistent, honest food done well. Tell us about your catering company, Frank said, leaning back in his chair. I'd prepared for this. I co-founded Emerald City Catering 6 years ago. We specialized in corporate events and weddings. At our peak, we were doing 50 events a month with a staff of 12. And you left because? Personal circumstances. A divorce. Diane glanced at Frank, then back at me. Did you handle the business side or the creative side? Both. I managed the books, dealt with vendors, created menus, coordinated with clients. My partner handled more of the day-to-day kitchen operations. Why should we hire you for this position? I took a breath. Here was the moment. I could play it safe, give them the standard interview answers. Or I could be honest. Because I know what it's like to lose everything, I said. 6 months ago, I walked away from a business I built, a marriage I believed in, and a life I thought was secure. I've spent the last few months waiting tables and living in a studio apartment, and I've learned something important. What's that? That starting over isn't the end. It's a beginning. I'm not the same person who built that catering company. I'm hungrier now. More careful. Less naive. I won't take this opportunity for granted because I know how quickly everything can disappear. Frank and Diane looked at each other. Some silent conversation passed between them. Can you start Monday? Diane asked. I threw myself into the job with everything I had. I arrived early, stayed late, reorganized the inventory system, renegotiated contracts with vendors, streamlined the scheduling. Within 2 months, food costs were down by 15% and staff turnover had dropped. But more than that, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with the restaurant business in the first place. It wasn't about the money or the prestige. It was about creating something that brought people together. A good meal, a warm atmosphere, a moment of comfort in someone's day. I'd lost that somewhere along the way with Emerald City Catering. It had become about growth, profit margins, impressing clients. The joy had leaked out slowly until I was just going through the motions. Here at the Copper Pot, I found it again. 6 months after the divorce. I was leaving work one evening when I saw them. Marcus and Miranda, sitting at a table by the window. He was checking his phone while she talked, her hands moving animatedly. They looked tired. Stressed. Not like the blissful couple I'd imagined them to be. I could have turned around. Slipped out the back. But something made me walk over. Sophia. Marcus stood up so quickly he nearly knocked over his water glass. What are you doing here? I work here. Kitchen manager. Miranda stared down at her plate. She'd lost weight. Dark circles under her eyes. How are you? Marcus asked, and he actually sounded like he cared. I'm good. Really good, actually. That's great. We heard you were waitressing. I thought maybe. You thought I'd crashed and burned? I smiled. I did. For a while. But then I got back up. The business is struggling, he blurted out. We've lost half our clients. The staff keeps quitting. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I looked at him, this man I'd spent 6 years of my life with, and felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction at his struggles. Just a mild, distant sympathy. You should probably figure that out, I said gently. Good luck. I walked away. And with each step, I felt lighter. That night, I sat in my small apartment and realized something profound. I'd spent 6 months thinking I'd lost everything. But I hadn't lost myself. I'd actually found myself. Found out what I was made of when everything was stripped away. I pulled out my laptop and started writing. Not a business plan. Not yet. Just ideas. Dreams. Things I'd always wanted to try, but had been too afraid to attempt. What if I could build something again? Not the same thing. Something better. Something that was completely, authentically mine. The old fear whispered, "You failed once. You'll fail again." But a new voice, stronger, answered back, "You didn't fail. You survived. And survival is its own kind of success." I kept writing until dawn. 9 months after the divorce. Spring came to Seattle with its usual burst of cherry blossoms and perpetual drizzle. I'd been at the Copper Pot for 6 months now, and life had settled into something resembling peace. Not happiness yet, but peace. And that was enough. I'd started taking community college classes 2 evenings a week. Business management and accounting. The things I'd learned by trial and error, I was now learning properly. My classmates were mostly people like me. Older students starting second chapters, immigrants building new lives, people who'd stumbled and were finding their footing again. One evening after class, my instructor, Professor Helen Okafor, asked me to stay behind. "Sophia, I've been impressed with your participation. You have practical experience that brings real value to our discussions." "Thank you. I'm just trying to fill in the gaps in my knowledge. There's a business incubator program I think you should apply for. The Cascade Innovation Center. They provide mentorship, office space, and seed funding for promising startups. Applications are due next month." "Professor Okafor, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not ready to start a business again." "Aren't you?" She pulled out a paper from her bag. My final project proposal. I'd written about a meal prep service focused on affordable, healthy food for working families. This is a solid concept. The market research is thorough. The financial projections are conservative, but realistic. You've already done the hard part. Why not take the next step? Because last time I built a business, I lost everything. Last time you built a business with a partner who betrayed you. This time, you'd be building something that's entirely yours. There's a difference. I took the paper from her, looking at my own words. I'd written it as a hypothetical, a class assignment. But reading it now, I could see it clearly. The ghost kitchens, the subscription model, the focus on families who couldn't afford organic delivery services, but still wanted better than fast food. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. The deadline is April 15th. I didn't tell anyone about the application. Not my coworkers, not my classmates, not even Rita. I worked on it in secret, late at night in my apartment, refining the business plan, running the numbers over and over. The concept was simple, NourishBox. A meal prep service that delivered fresh, pre-portioned ingredients with easy recipes to families in working-class neighborhoods. Not the wealthy tech workers who could afford Blue Apron. Not the organic foodies in Capitol Hill. But the single parents in Renton, the young couples in Tacoma, the families in South Seattle who were juggling 3 jobs and didn't have time to cook but couldn't afford to eat out. The margins would be tight but possible. The social impact could be real. And unlike Emerald City Catering, which had chased prestige clients and expensive events, this would be about serving people who actually needed the service. I submitted the application on April 14th, 1 day before the deadline. Then I tried to forget about it. 3 weeks later, I was in the walk-in freezer at the Copper Pot, counting inventory, when Rita knocked on the door. "Sophia, phone call. Says it's urgent." I came out, rubbing my cold hands together. "Who is it?" "Cascade Innovation Center." My heart stopped. I took the phone with shaking hands. "Hello, Ms. Clark? This is Patricia Alvarez from the Cascade Innovation Center. I'm pleased to inform you that your application for NourishBox has been accepted into our spring cohort. We received over 300 applications and selected 15. Congratulations." I couldn't speak. Rita was watching me, eyebrows raised. "Ms. Clark? Are you there?" "Yes. Yes, I'm here." "I thank you. Thank you so much. We'd like you to come in next Tuesday for orientation. 9 a.m. Can you make that?" "Yes. Absolutely." I hung up and stood there, phone still in my hand, not quite believing what had just happened. "Good news?" Rita asked. And then I started crying. Not sad tears. Not scared tears. Relief. Joy. The feeling of a door opening after being locked out in the cold for so long. Rita pulled me into a hug. "Tell me everything." The incubator. The Cascade Innovation Center occupied a renovated warehouse in the Georgetown neighborhood. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, long tables where startups worked side by side. It looked nothing like the corporate office I'd shared with Miranda, and that was perfect. I met the other 14 founders on orientation day. A mix of people, a woman developing an app for senior care, a man creating sustainable packaging, two college students with an educational software idea, an immigrant family starting a food truck business. We were assigned mentors. Mine was a man named Robert Chen, a serial entrepreneur who'd started and sold 3 companies. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through my careful composure. "Tell me about your previous business," he said in our first meeting. I gave him the sanitized version. "Built it up, personal circumstances changed, moved on. And tell me why you're really here." "Excuse me, I read your application. The business plan is good. Not great, but good. But the essay you wrote, the one about second chances and serving overlooked communities, that was compelling. So tell me the real story. What are you running from?" I should have been offended. Instead, I found myself telling him everything. Marcus, Miranda, the divorce, losing the business, the motel, the copper pot. All of it. When I finished, he nodded slowly. Good. Now we can actually work together. You can't build something real from a fake foundation. The fact that you're willing to be honest about your failure means you've learned from it. So what now? Now we turn your good idea into a great business. But first, I need you to answer a question. Why Nourishbox? Really? Is this about proving something to your ex-husband? Showing him you can succeed without him? I started to deny it, then stopped. Was that what this was about? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe partly. Then figure it out. Because if you're building this business for revenge or validation, it won't survive. You need a stronger why. Find it, then come back to me. He stood up, ending the meeting. I left confused and frustrated. I'd been accepted into the program, and my mentor was sending me away? But Robert was right, and I knew it. I spent the next week thinking about his question. Why was I doing this? I went back to my old neighborhood one Saturday. The place where I'd lived with Marcus, where Emerald City Catering had been born. I drove past our old house. There was a different car in the driveway, different curtains in the windows. Someone else's life now. I felt nothing looking at it. No nostalgia, no regret. It was just a building. Then I drove to Renton, to my current neighborhood. I stopped at the grocery store where I shopped, watched the families loading their carts. Processed foods, cheap meats, sugary snacks. Not because they wanted to feed their kids junk, but because it was what they could afford and had time to prepare. I saw a young mother, maybe 25, with 2 small children clinging to her cart. She was reading the nutrition label on a box of mac and cheese, then checking her phone, probably a calculator app. She put it back and grabbed the store brand instead. Cheaper by 40 cents. I'd been her. Not literally, but emotionally. Making every decision based on the price tag, knowing that one unexpected expense could topple everything. That's when I understood. This wasn't about Marcus or Miranda or proving anything. This was about creating something that would have helped me during those dark months. Something that would help people like that mother in the grocery store. I went back to Robert the next day. I figured it out, I said. I'm building this because no one should have to choose between feeding their family well and paying the rent. Because healthy food shouldn't be a luxury. Because I remember what it's like to be exhausted and broke and still trying to do right by yourself. He smiled. Now we can begin. The next 3 months. Building Nourishbox was harder than anything I'd ever done. The incubator provided office space and mentorship, but everything else was on me. I kept my job at the Copper Pot, working mornings there and spending afternoons and evenings at the incubator. I developed relationships with local farmers and wholesale suppliers. I tested recipes in my tiny apartment kitchen, making notes on cooking times and ingredient costs. I built a simple website. I created social media accounts. I designed packaging with the help of another startup founder who was a graphic designer. The incubator had a rule. You had to validate your concept with real customers before they'd provide any funding. That meant I needed to get 50 people to pay for my service before I could scale up. I started small. I printed flyers and went door to door in my apartment building, offering a free trial week. Out of 60 units, 12 people took me up on it. I prepared the meals myself, portioned everything, wrote out the recipe cards by hand, and delivered them on Sunday evenings. The feedback was better than I'd hoped. People loved the convenience and the price point. $25 for 3 dinners for a family of 4. That was less than fast food, but better quality. This is amazing, one single father told me. I work 2 jobs. I don't have time to plan meals or shop. But I can follow a recipe card while my kids do homework. You're saving me. Those words kept me going through the exhaustion. Through the nights when I wanted to quit. Through the moments of doubt when I thought I was crazy for trying this again. Word spread. I added another building, then another. By the end of month 2, I had 35 regular customers. By the end of month 3, I hit 52. Robert looked at my numbers during our weekly meeting. You've validated the concept. Time to pitch for seed funding. Already, the incubator board meets next week. You'll have 10 minutes to convince them to invest. Are you ready? I thought about the young mother in the grocery store. The single father juggling 2 jobs. The families I was serving who sent me messages saying Nourishbox had changed their lives. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The pitch. The conference room was intimidating. A long table with 8 board members, successful entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, community leaders. All of them had seen hundreds of pitches. All of them knew exactly which questions would expose the weak points in a business plan. I'd practiced my presentation 50 times. I knew every slide, every number, every word. But when I stood up to speak, I set aside my notes. 18 months ago, I was living in a motel room near the airport. I'd just lost my business, my marriage, and everything I thought defined me. I was starting over with nothing, no savings, no plan, no idea if I was strong enough to survive. I clicked to the first slide. A photo of my old studio apartment. I took a job as a waitress. I lived on rice and beans. I shopped at thrift stores. And I learned what it really means to struggle. Not the temporary discomfort of a tough month, but the constant grinding pressure of never having enough. Next slide. The young mother from the grocery store. I'd asked her permission to take the photo. This is Keisha. She works as a home health aide, 40 hours a week at $14 an hour. She has 3 children. Her dream is to feed them home-cooked meals every night, but by the time she gets home at 6:30, she's exhausted. So they eat fast food or frozen dinners because that's what she has time and energy for. Next slide. Numbers. There are approximately 200,000 families in the Seattle metro area who fit this demographic. Working class, time poor, trying to do their best but stuck choosing between nutrition and convenience. Nourishbox serves them. I walked them through the model. The partnerships with local farms. The ghost kitchen setup that kept overhead low. The subscription model that provided predictable revenue. The profit margins that were slim but sustainable. I'm not promising you a billion-dollar exit, I said at the end. I'm not the next Uber or Airbnb. But I am promising you a business that's profitable, scalable, and makes a real difference in people's lives. I'm asking for $50,000 in seed funding. In return, I'm offering 15% equity and a seat on my advisory board. I sat down. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. The questions came fast. How would I scale? What about competition? What were my customer acquisition costs? What if grocery stores started offering similar services? I answered each one. Honestly, directly, admitting when I didn't have a perfect solution, but explaining how I'd address the challenge. Finally, the board chair, a woman named Susan Moretti, leaned forward. Why should we bet on you specifically? You've already lost one business. Here it was. The question I'd been dreading. You're right, I said. I did lose a business. But I didn't fail. There's a difference. I built something successful that was destroyed by betrayal. And instead of giving up, I started over. I learned. I got stronger. The woman who built Emerald City Catering was naive and trusting. The woman sitting here today knows how to protect what she builds. She knows the value of every dollar because she's lived without them. She won't waste your investment because she's already learned that lesson the hard way. Susan nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Clark. We'll be in touch by Friday. I left the building and sat in my car for a long time, emotionally drained. I'd done everything I could. The rest was out of my hands. Friday morning, I was at the Copper Pot when my phone rang. Patricia Alvarez. Sophia, the board met yesterday. I'm calling with their decision. I held my breath. They're approving your funding request. $50,000. Congratulations. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. There's more. One of our board members, Susan Moretti, was so impressed with your pitch that she wants to make an additional personal investment of $25,000. She says you remind her of herself when she was starting out. $75,000. Enough to lease a proper commercial kitchen, hire help, scale up to 500 customers. Enough to turn Nourishbox from a side hustle into a real business. When do I start? I asked. Immediately. 1 year after the divorce. The commercial kitchen I leased was in a light industrial area near the Georgetown neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just 1,500 square feet of stainless steel surfaces, industrial refrigerators, and gas ranges. But it was mine. My name on the lease. My vision coming to life. I hired 3 people to start. Carmen, a culinary school graduate who couldn't afford the fine dining world but had incredible knife skills. Jamal, a former line cook who'd been laid off when his restaurant closed during the pandemic. And Beth, a grandmother who'd spent 40 years cooking for her family and wanted to turn that experience into income. We worked like a small army. Recipe testing on Mondays. Ingredient prep on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Assembly on Thursdays. Packing and delivery on Fridays and Saturdays. I still worked 3 mornings a week at the Copper Pot. I wasn't ready to give up that steady paycheck yet, but every other waking hour went into Nourishbox. The business grew organically. We started with those 52 customers and added about 20 new families each month. By month 3, we were at 150 subscribers. By month 6, 340. The reviews were incredible. Finally, healthy food I can afford. My kids are eating vegetables without complaining. I feel like a better parent because I can give them real meals. Every review reminded me why I was doing this. This wasn't about building an empire. It was about filling a need that I'd once felt myself. Robert checked in with me monthly. Our meetings had evolved from mentor-student to something more like colleagues. He pushed me, asked hard questions, but also celebrated the wins. "You need to think about your next raise," he said one afternoon. "You're at capacity with your current kitchen. To scale beyond 500 customers, you'll need more space, more staff, more equipment." I know. I'm not sure I'm ready. Why not? Because last time I scaled, I lost control. I brought in a partner. I trusted the wrong person. I'm afraid of repeating that mistake. So don't repeat it. You don't need a partner, Sophia. You need employees. People you can train, manage, and replace if necessary. There's a difference between sharing ownership and delegating responsibility. He was right, of course. But the fear was still there, living in my chest like a small, cold stone. What if I fail again? I asked quietly. Then you fail. But this time, you'll fail as yourself, not as half of something else. And honestly, I don't think you will fail. You're too stubborn. I laughed despite myself. Is that a compliment? It's the highest one I can give an entrepreneur. 15 months after the divorce. I was at the kitchen one Saturday afternoon, training a new employee, when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sophia. This is Diane Torres from the Copper Pot. Can you call me when you have a moment? It's about a business opportunity." Diane and Frank had been nothing but supportive of my venture. I'd given them plenty of notice before reducing my hours, and they'd even let me use their commercial kitchen after hours in the early days. I called her back immediately. "Sophia, thank you for calling. Frank and I have been talking, and we're ready to semi-retire. We want to travel, spend time with our grandchildren. We're looking to sell the Copper Pot." My heart sank. "Oh, Diane, I'm going to miss working with you both. That's actually why I'm calling. We want to offer you first right of refusal." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "We've watched you build Nourishbox. We know you understand the restaurant business. We think you could take the Copper Pot to the next level while keeping the heart of what we built. And we'd offer you favorable terms, owner financing, a longer transition period, so we can train you properly." "Diane, I'm flattered, but I don't have the capital. I'm barely breaking even with Nourishbox. The purchase price is $400,000. We'd want 20% down, $80,000, and we'd finance the rest over 10 years at a reasonable rate. Think about it. You could run Nourishbox out of the Copper Pot's kitchen during off hours. You'd have an established customer base and revenue stream. It's a faster path to stability. Can I think about it? Of course. But we need an answer in 2 weeks. We have other interested buyers. I spent the next 2 weeks running numbers until my eyes crossed. I talked to Robert. I talked to Susan Moretti. I even talked to Professor Okafor from my community college class. Everyone said the same thing. It was a good opportunity, but risky. I'd be taking on significant debt. I'd be managing 2 businesses simultaneously. I could easily get overwhelmed and lose both. But I'd also have stability. Real estate. An established brand. The Copper Pot had been profitable for 15 years. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. The night before I had to give Diane my answer, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that motel room 18 months ago. The woman I'd been then, broken, lost, terrified. What would I tell her if I could go back? That it gets better. That she's stronger than she knows. That losing everything is terrifying, but it's also freedom. Freedom to rebuild exactly the way you want, without compromise. I called Diane in the morning. I want to do it. Let's talk terms. The purchase, 18 months after the divorce. Buying the copper pot was the scariest thing I'd ever done. I liquidated what little savings I had. Susan Moretti became an angel investor, providing $30,000 of the down payment in exchange for a small equity stake. I took out a small business loan for the rest. When I signed the papers, my hand shook so badly I could barely write my signature. $400,000 in debt. 2 businesses to run. A staff of 15 people depending on me. Frank shook my hand. You're going to be great. But can I give you one piece of advice? Please, don't try to do everything yourself. We almost lost this place in the first few years because we thought we had to control every detail. Trust your people. Delegate. You'll go further. Diane hugged me. And don't forget why you're doing this. It's not about the money. It's about creating something meaningful. The transition took 3 months. Frank and Diane stayed on as consultants, teaching me the systems they'd built over 15 years. I promoted Rita to general manager. I hired a new head chef who understood my vision of simple, honest food done well. And slowly, carefully, I integrated Nourishbox operations into the copper pot. We used the kitchen during off hours. We trained the restaurant staff to help with meal prep when things were slow. We cross-promoted. Restaurant customers learned about Nourishbox. Nourishbox customers came to the restaurant for special occasions. It was exhausting. I worked 16-hour days. I lost 12 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. I had stressed dreams about burning food and angry customers and bankruptcy. But it was working. The Copper Pot's revenue stayed stable. Nourishbox grew to 600 subscribers. I hired more staff. I implemented better systems. I learned to let go of controlling every detail and trust the people I'd hired. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again, pride. 20 months after the divorce. I was at the Copper Pot on a Tuesday evening, meeting with my accountant to review quarterly financials, when I saw them walk in. Marcus and Miranda. My first instinct was to hide. My second was to throw them out. But I was the owner now. This was my restaurant. I didn't have to run. Rita approached them at the host's stand, but I walked over before she could seat them. Marcus. Miranda. They both looked shocked to see me. Marcus recovered first. Sophia. We didn't know you'd be here. We can go somewhere else. It's fine. Stay. Rita will take care of you. I started to walk away, but Miranda reached out and touched my arm. Sophia, please. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I looked at her. She'd aged in the past 2 years. Lines around her eyes, gray in her hair that she hadn't bothered to dye. She looked tired. Sad. Okay. But not here. Outside. We stepped out onto the sidewalk. The spring evening was cool, rain threatening. Marcus stayed inside. I'm sorry, Miranda said immediately. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry. For all of it. Why are you telling me this? Because I've spent 2 years living with what I did, and it's eating me alive. The business failed. Marcus and I are barely speaking. Everything I touched turned to poison. She laughed bitterly. Maybe that's karma. Maybe it is, I said without sympathy. But seeing you here, owning this place, looking so together. I needed to say it. You didn't deserve what we did to you. I studied her face. I'd spent so many nights imagining this conversation. In my fantasies, I was cold and cruel, made her feel every bit of the pain she'd caused me. But standing here now, I felt only pity. I forgive you, I said. She looked stunned. What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I spent too long carrying anger around like a stone in my chest. I'm done with it. I'm done with you. Sophia. I mean that literally. I'm done. This is the last conversation we'll ever have. You and Marcus can eat here or not, I don't care. But we're not friends. We're not even acquaintances. We're just 2 people who used to know each other. I turned to go back inside, but she called after me. Did you really forgive me? Or are you just saying that? I paused. Does it matter? The result is the same. I get to move on. Inside, Marcus was sitting alone at a table. He stood up when he saw me. Sophia, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. I was wrong. About everything. You were the best thing in my life, and I destroyed it because I was selfish and stupid and scared. Scared of what? Of not being enough. You were so capable, so driven. You built that business almost single-handedly while I just coasted. I felt like I was disappearing next to you. So I sabotaged it. Sabotaged us. That's not an excuse, Marcus. I know. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to explain. He ran his hand through his hair. The business collapsed. We tried to save it, but without you, we didn't know what we were doing. We lost everything. The house, the clients, all of it. And you want me to feel sorry for you? No. I want you to know that you were right to leave. I want you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. And I want you to know that I'm genuinely happy that you're doing well. You deserve it. I looked at this man I'd once loved. I'd spent 6 years with him. Shared dreams, a home, a life. And now he was a stranger. Thank you, I said finally, for the apology. But I need you to understand something. I didn't rebuild my life to show you what you lost. I didn't succeed to make you regret your choices. I did it for me. Only for me. I understand. I don't think you do. But that's okay. You don't need to. I walked away. Rita caught my eye, concern on her face. I nodded that I was okay. Because I was. Truly, genuinely okay. 2 years after the divorce. The Copper Pot was thriving. Nourish Box had expanded to 1,200 subscribers across 3 neighborhoods. I'd leased a second commercial kitchen and hired 20 employees. Revenue had crossed $1 million annually. But more than the numbers, I was proud of what we'd built. The families we served. The jobs we created. The small difference we made in people's daily lives. I'd been featured in a local business magazine. From Divorce to Success, One Woman's Journey of Rebuilding. The article was fair and honest. It didn't sugarcoat the struggles or the failures. It just told the truth. After it published, I got hundreds of messages. Most were from women going through divorces, women who'd lost businesses, women starting over after betrayal or hardship. They all said the same thing. Your story gave me hope. That meant more than any revenue milestone. One Saturday evening, I was at the Copper Pot's bar, reviewing the week's numbers, when a man sat down next to me. Older, maybe late 40s, in a casual suit. Sophia Clark? Yes. I'm David Greenwald. I run a venture capital firm here in Seattle. I've been following Nourish Box's growth. Very impressive. Thank you. I'd like to talk to you about scaling. National expansion. We think your model could work in 20 or 30 cities across the country. My heart started racing. This was the conversation every entrepreneur dreams about. Venture capital. Rapid growth. Taking a small idea and turning it into something massive. I appreciate the interest, I said carefully. But I'm not sure I'm looking for that kind of expansion right now. Why not? You've clearly validated the model. The unit economics work. You have a compelling founder story. We could take you from $1 million in revenue to $50 million in 3 years. And I'd lose control. He smiled. Not necessarily. We'd want a significant equity stake, yes. But you'd still be CEO. You'd still run the day-to-day operations. Until you decided I wasn't the right person to take it to the next level. I've heard these stories, Mr. Greenwald. Founders get pushed out of their own companies all the time. That happens when founders can't scale with the business. You strike me as someone who can adapt. I thought about it. Really thought about it. $50 million in revenue. Nourish Box in cities across America. Helping hundreds of thousands of families instead of just 1,000. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. Can I have some time to think about it? Of course. Here's my card. Call me when you're ready to talk seriously. I met with Robert the next day and told him about the offer. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to go for it. Build something massive. Prove that I can. And the other part? The other part remembers sitting in a motel room 2 years ago, thinking my life was over. And how I rebuilt it slowly, carefully, on my own terms. I'm not sure I want to give that up. Not for money. Not for growth. Not for anything. Robert nodded. Then you have your answer. But what if I'm being scared? What if I'm playing it safe because I'm afraid to dream big again? There's a difference between dreaming big and losing yourself in someone else's vision. Only you know which one this is. I thought about it for a week. I ran the numbers. I imagined what it would be like to expand nationally. The excitement. The challenges. The potential impact. But I also thought about my employees. Carmen, Jamal, Beth, and the 17 others who depended on me. I thought about my customers, the families who trusted me to provide affordable, healthy meals. I thought about the woman in the motel room who'd lost everything and had to start over. What would I tell her? That success isn't always about how big you grow. Sometimes it's about staying true to what matters. I called David Greenwald. Thank you for the offer, but I'm going to pass. Can I ask why? Because Nourishbox isn't about building a billion-dollar company. It's about serving people who need this service. If I scale nationally, I'll lose touch with that. I'll be managing investors and board meetings instead of developing recipes and talking to customers. That's not why I started this. I respect that. But if you change your mind, the offer stands. I won't change my mind, but I appreciate your interest. 2.5 years after the divorce, present day. I'm standing in my restaurant, the Copper Pot, watching the Saturday dinner rush. Every table is full. The kitchen is humming. My staff is working like a well-oiled machine. In the back office, there are 1,400 Nourishbox orders waiting to be prepared next week. 1,400 families who trust me to help them feed their children well. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not building an empire. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. But I'm happy. Truly, deeply happy. I own 2 profitable businesses. I employ 23 people, most of whom were struggling to find work when I hired them. I serve thousands of customers who depend on what I've built. And most importantly, I know who I am. Not Marcus's wife. Not Miranda's business partner. Not someone defined by what I lost. Just Sophia. A woman who fell apart and put herself back together. A woman who learned that starting over isn't the end. It's the beginning of something better. My phone buzzes. A message from a customer. Thank you for Nourishbox. My son has autism and is a very picky eater. Your meals are the only ones he'll try. Tonight he ate broccoli for the first time ever. I cried happy tears. You're changing lives. I saved the message. I have a folder full of them. On hard days, when I'm tired and overwhelmed and wondering if it's all worth it, I read them. They remind me why I do this. Not for revenge against people who hurt me. Not to prove I'm better than my failures. But because somewhere out there, there's a woman sitting in a motel room, thinking her life is over. And maybe, just maybe, my story will give her hope. 3 years ago, I lost everything. My marriage, my business, my home, my identity. But I gained something more valuable, myself. I learned that you don't need someone else to complete you. You don't need a partner to validate your worth. You don't need a fairy tale ending to have a good life. You just need the courage to get up, dust yourself off, and take one step forward. Then another. Then another. That's all success really is. One step at a time, building something real, something meaningful, something yours. And if a woman who was once crying in a motel room can build 2 thriving businesses and a life she's proud of, then anyone can. You just have to believe you're worth the effort. Because you are. I'm really glad you're here, and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what you learned from Sophia's journey. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next. Remember, you're always one decision away from a completely different life. Make it count.